Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Lost in Space from 1998. So, William Hurt had passed away recently, and it was one of those where, weirdly enough, I've been wanting to actually watch Lost in Space, the movie, for a while, and, it also, having William Hurt pass away, I was kind of pondering. It's should I review something like Michael or Mr. Brooks or some other kind of William Hurt movie, because kind of all of the Marvel films, I've technically reviewed those already. They're all done. And as far as the tying of William Hurt in any number of them, so I'm just probably could have gone on and chose kind of a William Hurt movie that people might not have known. But I chose this one. I figured kind of with the Netflix series, this movie might intrigue me to want to watch the series, kind of see how drastically different it is. So I will have to say, with this movie, special effects wise, this movie doesn't hold up. There's a lot about this movie that people would go into this movie now and kind of chuckle about, and that's fine. I think here's the thing. The thing that sells me is these kind of character interactions that we have with all these characters, that it really seems like nobody is to really like anybody, but they're all having to forcibly be on this ship together, and we have everyone just regret going on this thing, and that's the real interesting part of this movie. But I'm sure the cast all was rooting for everybody, but it's just the fact that we can't have a whole entire crew that is to just love one another and everything is to be great, because there needs to be conflict throughout a film. And so really, so much about this kind of feels really like the Mark Wahlberg Planet of the Apes film, to me a little bit, or for the most part, because it kind of feels similar. Besides that, to me, this feels a tweed bit like a movie called Event Horizon, without the whole very dark, disturbing way that Event Horizon eventually goes into. If you've ever seen that movie, man, does it get freaking dark. People's eyes are gone, and they're still kind of walking around being a menacing character. So yeah, there's that. But every once in a while, I think my main attraction of this film is simply because of one small scene. We have Matt LeBlanc at one point, who is to have to go on and put this kind of armor of a helmet upon his head, and is to go on and have this futuristic looking weapon, and is to fire away upon these weird goofy space spiders, because they don't have a legitimate name. They just call them space spiders. Might as well, right? So, if I don't remember anything from this movie, I will always remember that one scene where just Matt LeBlanc is going on, and he's talking about oh man, I spent $1 million, $1 million equipment, and I have to trade it all in because of or because we don't have a can of Raid or something like that, because they don't have bug spray to just kill all these things off. And so they desperately need to go on and have this one really cool action sequence within a film that is to mostly be an adventure movie. So, but yeah, this also fits the bill for a lot of Star Trek kind of shows, or Andromeda and all those kinds of things. Farscape, maybe not Farscape, because Farscape there's like one human and then a number of different aliens that are all kind of like smushed into a ship. But if you kind of look at the visuals for Farscape and you look at the visuals for Lost in Space, there's similar things like the ship and like how like there's some similarities. But anyways, so so with that said, you could probably make a million comparisons to a million different things with Lost in Space. But anyways, so but the interactions between all the characters really sell me. And so with that said, let's just go into like grading. Grading of this movie, I would have to say that even though the special effects are what there are, they're they do what they do. I would have to say that this is a okay film, like a middle of the road okay kind of film. Um, there's certain lines and certain parts of this movie that I like remembered and immediately like especially when John Robinson at the end of the movie is talking about how they need to go through the planet as it's breaking up. Like that's that's just a bizarre delivery for that line. And I'm kind of curious how many takes they went into, if that was like the one take and they're like, yeah, he can't do it better than that. Let's go on. Let's push on. Or maybe they're just like, not liking that delivery. Maybe you can go on and like really just like through and yeah, like emphasize how important it is. And like maybe that was a take that they went with. It's like, yeah, good enough. Yeah, you're really going like, yeah, you're really getting the feeling in there. So, but we also have like a little bit of like Fifth Element vibes because Gary Oldman is technically the villain in this movie, and we kind of have what would be Matt LeBlanc as kind of like this Bruce Willis kind of character where he's just kind of stuck in this kind of environment that he really doesn't want to be in, but like eventually he sees this attractive girl named Judy who he's just like, how can I just win her over every single time putting my foot in my mouth, but how can I just win this girl over? Good enough to just like have her just give me some, you know what I'm saying? And I guess that's really all for Wes or Matt LeBlanc in this movie. But anyways, so with that said, yeah, just like it's a fun film, but yeah. Immediately once you go into this film, we're like, man, the special effects budget. Especially when we get into like the fighting and stuff, it's just like it doesn't hold up. But like they probably could have saved it by approaching this differently. And like a different part of it would just be like it seems like there were certain shots that were done well, and they like I guess for that time, it's like, hey man, for that time, like that was like the best. But yeah. So let's go into it. Let's go into that Double Five bad boy. Conveniently, this movie's on HBO Max. I'm not going on and just picking every single movie that's on HBO Max. It's just coincidence that a movie that I was to pick is like, oh, hey, it's on HBO Max. Great, because that's what I was gonna like. Luckily, it's on a convenient app somewhere. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you to spoil this movie. So, very beginning, of course, we have the year of 2058, which I don't know how futuristic that we're gonna get 30 years from now, but like, hey, wouldn't that be great? So we of course have the United Global Space Force that is to go on and have this space base of sorts. That the reasoning for that is because we find out that planet Earth is really just not as well off as people are to believe upon their own planet, and they're trying to save it, and come to find out John Robinson is to give Matt LeBlanc's character Wes the hard truth that, like, yeah, like, this planet is doomed. So we gotta, like, figure out a plan B, which is to really just find a alternate Earth, which is to be a planet called Alpha Prime. So how they're gonna do this is they're planning on this 10-year trek to have these people make this ship all the way to Alpha Prime. And during that time, Earth and this United Global Space Force is to go on and have this hypergate. So that way, as soon as these people go on and make it to Alpha Prime, and they're easily to be able to track how to get... So people can go in through this hypergate and easily end up right at Alpha Prime. So not every time they do this ship, it's going to take like 10 years to trek out there. It's just going to take like a minute or two. So I think a lot of people would immediately go on and just be like, well, wait a minute, because they have this like hyperdrive like thing that they can go on and quickly like fast travel to wherever they're going. And a reporter is to mention that to John Robinson, and John Robinson mentions like, well, here's the thing about a hyperdrive. If we use this hyperdrive, we won't know where eventually we'll land. Like, we won't know. It'll be a random thing. Like, we can't guarantee that this hyperdrive is going to land us on Alpha Prime. It's just not going to be that perfect. It's going to be some random location that we don't even know where we are. And in my brain, I'm just like, well, then how can you guarantee? Because I have this with every single like planet or every single like ship that has this kind of like warp drive like mechanism. How is it that a ship has never like rammed straight into a planet without even realizing it because they're going so fast? How has that never happened? How has a number of ships never died from smacking into a number of things because they're going so fast? Like, is it like the quickest autopilot that you've ever heard of in your life? Where, like, they easily course correct knowing that everything is to be in existence? But again, for this hyperdrive thing, this is to be random. So, like, it's not like the ship really has a really well GPS, and it's going at a warp of X amount of whatever. And so, yeah, there's a lot of holes in this thought process of me just kind of figuring this whole thing out. But so, John Robinson is explaining this to everybody, and so we also find out that there is another force called the Global Sedition that is trying to prevent the United Global Space Force from going on. So this is basically the Darth Vader side of things to the what is to be kind of like the Rebel Alliance, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker Lost in Space crew. So we have the Global Sedition that is going and sending these Gen Tech fighters to try and take down, of course, these bubble fighters that Matt LeBlanc is to be like wheeling and dealing at the early part of this movie. And he, of course, is kind of kind of working together with another pilot called Jeb Walker, which once I watched this movie, I immediately realized I'm like, oh my god, like that guy's from like Walking Dead and like Fear the Walking Dead, and I never made that assumption before that Lenny James was this guy because like he had like eye contacts on and he spoke a vastly different voice than what he was speaking in The Walking Dead, so I wouldn't have recognized him. But it's kind of interesting to kind of see that, oh hey, yeah, this guy's on Lost in Space. So what happens is we have the bubble fighters, and we had it where Jeb had to forcibly eject from his bubble fighter, and so now we just have like this guy's just kind of bubble kind of like sifting into space, and Jeb is trying to call to see if anybody can kind of get him out of the way because he's probably going to crash land into a place that's unsafe. And so Wes is going on, and he's going to have to use his ship to knock Jeb into a clear space, so that way eventually he'll get picked up later, while Wes is still kind of fighting people off. And so Wes is telling Jeb, it's like, hey, like, I'm going to give you a little kiss. Don't take this the wrong way. And so he smacks him. And so Jeb is asking Wes, it's like, hey, so does that mean we're going study? And Wes is like, like, shush, like, let's go on and buy some beers. Because their war, of course, is over with the Gen Tech. So we have John Robinson and this general going on and talking about how these global seditions are trying to consistently put a pipe in the, or put a wrench in what these guys are trying to do consistently, where supposedly they're mentioning about Captain Daniels and him being gone, and that they mentioned something else kind of trying to be like sabotaged or being fouled up. So Robinson is talking over with the general, and we of course have the general who's like, well, I have a guy lined up, but he doesn't know it yet. And Robinson is just like, oh, great, like, I'm sure that's going to work out. So we have Robinson in the general meeting with Wes, and so they explain to Major Wes that what is really truly happening with Earth, and how, like, they're crunching numbers, and they're talking about, like, 40% and all of this digital, whatever, goofy environmental stuff that makes no jibber jabber to me. So, mentioning that Earth is basically doomed. And because Wes is to hear, like, from school, or from the school that he went to, that they're trying to come up with some kind of way to save the Earth. And Robinson is telling him, it's like, well, like, your school told you the wrong thing. Like, they weren't really going to tell you the real truth. So Wes is to go on and mention that the Jupiter mission that he's going to have to go on and be a part of is just some babysitting job, and any monkey can flip a switch and do this. Like, you don't need a highly qualified man to go on and do this kind of mission. And so we of course have Robinson that's just saying that, like, yeah, this guy's perfect. It's just perfect for the job. Like, he probably doesn't even like me. He doesn't even want to do this mission. Like, yeah, like, he's the perfect man. Like, because they're going to bicker the whole entire time. So, because supposedly, like, on the adventure side of things, Robinson is going to be in charge in charge. But whenever there's a combat scenario, uh, the powers of things is going to be transferred over to, of course, Wes here. So they go on, and so like Wes is to also find out that Daniels was assassinated, was killed, and that maybe he'll be next. So it's like, hey, like you want to do this or not? So we have Dr. Smith who is talking to, I guess, the global sedition people, and Dr. Smith is mentioning that these guys were to have gotten access from Captain Daniels' quarters, and so he did his job. And where is his quiche? Where is his money? And the global sedition people, it's like, well, Dr. Smith, that's just not quite enough. Like, you have to go on to Jupiter 2, and you have to go on and sabotage that ship. And then we'll pay. Like, no, like, you're just waiting for this guy to somehow or another get killed off. So, Dr. Smith goes on to Jupiter 2, and so he programs this robot 16 hours into the mission to destroy everything. And then he goes on and is to talk to his kind of global sedition guy, and it seems that they were to electrify this guy's gadget piece to kind of knock him out and keep him on the ship. I guess to guarantee that this ship is going to go down, and this guy is going to be like the captain that is going down with this ship. So, because we find out the global sedition people are also trying to do the exact same thing as the other people are. They're going to go on and try to build a perfect Earth or this perfect other Earth on Alpha Prime also. So it's kind of a race to get there first. So it's a whole lot of that going on. So now we go on and we have Wes, who is making his way to the ship, and we, of course, have him being introduced to Judy, who is, of course, Robinson's oldest daughter, which he doesn't really know that until all of a sudden Judy and Wes are kind of interacting with one another, and like it seems like there's kind of some back and forth quips going on here, and Wes, of course, is going on of like, man, that's a cold fish that I'd love to thaw. And then all of a sudden Judy goes on is like, oh, hey, Dad, yeah, I'm going to miss dinner tonight. And Wes is like, oh, like, okay, and everybody's like, yeah, we're just going to pretend you didn't say that. So we come to find out that it seems that every single kid, with the exclusion of Judy, for John Robinson, like, all of them are in trouble right now. Because we, of course, have Will, who is going on and doing all these things that are getting him in trouble, to all of a sudden have the principal have this kind of video conference with Marine, where Will goes on and is to change this principal into a number of different images and scenarios, where at one point, like, she's like dancing around like a gorilla and she's in a bikini and all this other stuff. And Marine goes on and finds out where Will is, and he's like, hey, no more monkey business. Stop doing this. Stop getting in trouble. Penny, of course, which I just realized now, I'm like, I know I've seen this girl somewhere, but I'm trying to figure out exactly where. Um, I had, I'll be honest. I've seen Mean Girls. Do I remember anything about it? No. But I've seen the movie once, like because everybody was freaking like when the movie came out, everybody talked about it for some absurd reason, and I still don't understand why. But like I saw it because everyone else saw it. It's like for me, if anybody talks about it a bajillion times over, then I'm like, well, like what are they talking about? And so I just watch it. Or a lot of times there's just I watch a lot of movies with my mom, and so Mean Girls would probably be one of those to have watched for some weird reason. Uh, but I think Penny also was on like not another teen movie. Lacey Chabert or Chalbert, and I'm assuming she was on like Party of Five or something. I don't know. I'm not going through the IMDb Rolodex of things. I'm just going off of a barely good memory. So, but yeah. So Penny is to be this kind of vlogger, which I kind of like this about this movie because his character is to kind of bring the comedic relief, and so and Penny was just a really fun character in this movie overall. So and it's kind of like interesting the Will and the Penny kind of confrontations between one another because they're so like brother and sister, kind of a really good dynamic between the two. So Penny goes on and she is to record everything that she's going to miss when she leaves Earth because they're going to leave Earth for 10 years and probably everybody's going to outgrow or be way older. It's going to be the whole like blip thing, or it's going to be the whole like Thanos snap for a number of these people because they'll probably be cryogenically frozen, and it's like so they're going to be the same age, but everyone else is going to be way older or dead or whichever. So Penny is also consistently going out, and she is deciding to take 10 years of allowance and spend anything that she wants on clothes because what is her mother really going to do? Ground her? And plus, they're leaving the planet like tomorrow. Like, so what is anything that she's going to do? What is it really going to matter? But supposedly, Marine has mentioned that Penny had gone on and consistently been brought home by police the last couple of days. Um, we also have Will, who's a very accomplished tech kid who has gone on and won tons and tons of first place awards for a number of sciencey things. We have Will, who is to have the possibility of inventing time travel, and Robinson, who or John Robinson, who at one point comes home, is to see this small invention, and he's like, like this is a really good invention for. It's like there's some sound things here. Um, so John is to make his way home, and so Marine is kind of telling John what's really going on with his whole family and how John really isn't there. And John's like, "Well, hey, I'm sorry. Like, we had this new guy I had to like deal with the whole like pilot situation. Like, I just had to deal with all that, and so we have everybody that's just kind of really stressed out about kind of leaving everybody behind, but like really it's just like, well, hey, that's what we got to do. Like it's for like the planet, and we're probably way better off going on and getting to this other planet Earth than sticking around here. So we go on, and now we are to launch Jupiter 2. So things, of course, are going off without a hitch. Every single family member is to go on and is to just kind of get ready to get cryogenically napping, cryogenically sleeping, cryo-chambered. Let's say that the correct way. So while that's going on, we of course have Wes, who is to have to be the monkey and flip the switch. And so we have Wes that goes on and is to go into his cryo chamber, and he's like, I hate cryo chambers, they give me horrible nightmares. And so Wes goes in to his cryo and he sleeps. So Dr. Smith is to wake up mid whatever the heck part of this adventure that these guys are on, this autopiloting adventure. And it seems that I guess we're roughly at the 16-hour marker where this robot is going to attack everybody, destroy everything. And so Dr. Gray is crazily hitting buttons, crazily just smacking things. Because he's like, wake up, I can't take on this thing by myself. And so he is desperately just hitting buttons, desperately trying to get anybody to wake the F up. And so for the most point, we have like certain people who kind of slowly but surely awake. I think it's mostly like the women and like the kid, and then I think John wakes up and Wes wakes up, or West. I keep saying West probably. So Dr. Smith ends up getting taken out, and so like he purposely bumps himself on the head good enough to make it look like he's bleeding, and Wes is to go on and find him, and is to look at his hand. It's like, well, wait a minute, like this is like sedation technology, and he's like, you're the guy that probably did all this. So they go on and they take off the blinders of where they're locationed at, and so John Robinson, of course, or John, is to figure out that they're way off course. They're basically at the sun, and the sun has pulled them into the gravity of the of it. So they're getting sucked into the sun, and they need to figure out a way to get out of this, and it seems like they are having problems doing so. So while that's going on, we have this crazy robot that's wanting to kill everybody. Isn't that great? So we, of course, have Will that... It's either Will or William. Like, they say William in this movie, but I think a lot of the times they just call him Will. So Will goes on, and he, is to go and get into this elevator and, jump down to this other section of the ship. And so Wes is jumping on the back of this robot, trying to pull out cords like he's freaking Tony Stark from Iron Man 1, where he's fighting the Ironmonger. Is like, hey, this looks important. Rip, tear. So we have that moment going on. So Matt LeBlanc was Tony Stark before Tony Stark was Tony Stark. Sure. Anyways, so we have this robot consistently blasting throughout the place. Things are getting on fire, and everybody's thinking they're going to die soon because the robot is consistently saying, murder, hurt, kill, the Robinson family. Destroy, he says destroy a lot. Destroy the Robinson family. Anyways, so what happens is we find out that Will is to weirdly be able to, I guess, Wi-Fi connect with this robot, and is to remotely control it. So the robot, doesn't go on and kill his family. And so Will is saying, it's like, well, hey, like, you can't bring the family to the science fair, so you have to bring the science fair to the family. As I guess we have Will, who is to have figured out how to connect with this robot to kind of bring him back to not attack mode. And so we find out that there is a remote that, or we find out that, like, so Will is trying to, like, counter control this robot. And at one point we even have it where Will is kind of like completely instead of actually being in the mission, he's in the robot doing the mission, kind of seeing what the robot sees. So, which I think is actually kind of an interesting way to do that. Because I like those kind of things where you have like the character that's technically there and technically not. Kind of like Iron Man 3, where we kind of find out like that Iron Man really isn't in the suit at portions of that film. But again, it's kind of a ripoff, but still, it is what it is. So, or like Homecoming, of course, same thing. So, but pushing on. So, we're dealing with the sun. And so, we of course have them decide that, hey, like, we need to desperately just use your hyperdrive to just, instead of having to try and desperately figure out a way to get away from the sun, how about we just go through the sun with the hyperdrive? Because I guess weirdly I just realized this now that I'm like, well, what was the problem about like going through a planet? I guess you can't really but still, like, you're going through the sun. Like, does the sun really have a surface? But again, I guess with a hyperdrive, you can go through anything because hyperdrive, but still, like, I don't know, like, wouldn't that destroy a planet? Like, I'm just thinking of like the moon, where like somebody would just like smash into the moon with their ship because they're going so fast, and it would just destroy the moon. Because I feel like we've seen so many destroying moon movies that it gets just really redonkulous. Anyways, so what is the real importance of the moon? In all honesty, isn't it just some rock? Do we really need the moon? Do we? Yeah, we probably do. So that we can tell when it's nighttime out. Cause it being blackout isn't good enough. No! We need this thing called the moon to tell us when night happens. There's a scientific reason for that, sir. I'm going to tell you right now why the moon is so important. Movie! Like, if you can point me to a movie where it's saying why the moon is so important, then then that would be the easy thing. Not a documentary thing, a real legit film that all of a sudden they cue up how important the moon is. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, great. So moon is important for reasons. Pushing on. I've gone far too far. So they hyperdrive, they go through the sun, and now they go on and they have no clue where they're at, where they be at, where they're going and doing their thing. And so they're trying to figure out all the star alignments and like, yeah, we've never seen any of these planets before. Oh my god, this is cray-cray. So these guys are just continually floating along because that's all they can really do. So now that they've kind of like safely are in space now, they go on and they take Dr. Smith after he is to go on and have to forcibly like revive Judy, because Judy was like frozen in her cryo, and they had to like figure out a way to uh like really revive her, because like I guess there was problems with her pod. So all of a sudden, like, Dr. Smith is physically like doing CPR in this woman, and he's like, "Come on, because your life might mean my life, and so come on, woman, like you can do this." So after Dr. Smith is to go on and bring Judy back to life, we have Robinson. We have John, who makes his way back to kind of check on Judy and kind of hugs her. And like Judy is going on and just talking about like certain parts of the ship, because they were to go on and uh, they were to like spray down parts of the ship that were on fire with these kind of like fire extinguisher like spray downs from coming from like the ceilings and whatever. So Judy is going on and talking about like certain ways that she could best like approach things in the future. And Robinson is like, "How are you? Like, how are you right now? That's the only thing that matters." And she's like, "Oh, I'm fine." I'm like, "Good." So Robinson is now tempted to grab Dr. Smith and beat him to death. But then Dr. Smith is like, "Oh, you're not going to do that, are you?" Because that would make you a monster. And you're also having to do that in front of your family. So Robinson instead just decides to just shut down this wall that Dr. Smith is being held in this room. And, like, I guess that's just going to be good enough. So Wes keeps popping by to give, of course, Dr. Smith like bed sheets or like food and drink and whatever. And so at points, like, you kind of have fun with their interactions together, because of course, like, we have the one interaction where Dr. Smith is talking to Wes as he's giving him like these bed sheets. Dr. Smith's like, "Yeah, like, is that what you're like resorted to now? Like, you're just like, you're just my waiter. You're just like, man, like, you know what? You can go on and really, like, the two of us can like go on and take over the ship." And Wes is like, "Wow, you know what? You're right. You're so right. How about I go on and like I go and find you a gun and we can just take the ship together?" And Dr. Smith is telling Wes, it's like, "Well, hey, like, sarcasm just like means you're in pain and you're weak." And Wes is just like, "Yeah, like, I'm really hiding my pain, doctor." And so Wes goes on and he like is trolling along, and Dr. Smith is like, "Your pain is only beginning." Yeah, because we have evil maniacal guy that is just trying to figure out how to persuade people, and eventually he finds his person, his persuader, at some point in this film. So, but let's backtrack a little bit. So they go on and they find this big massive ship floating upon this thing called space. And this ship is actually to be called the Plotius. And so they go on and find this big massive ship that has absolutely diddly worth of people on it. You would have thought there would have been like bodies or some kind of something. So they decide to go on this ship because they're like, "Hey, we're low on fuel sources and probably Snickers bars, so let's go on and let's go into this ship." So they go into the Pelodius ship to go on and find that it seems that this was some other ship that was tied to the United Global Space Force. And it seems like this tech that is on this ship is well advanced. And Dr. Smith is to also go on with these people to go in to check on things, as well as everybody's to have these kind of like armor suits on and these space suits to kind of see if there's breathable air in the ship. So we have like the robot that kind of rolls in, and Dr. Smith is mentioning how, like, since these other robots are so much more far high tech than any of these other than the model they have, we have Dr. Smith turning to the robot and saying, it was like, hey, I guess you're a poor cousin. So Dr. Smith, while everyone isn't looking, is stealing one of these remotes from this robot so he can go on and control one of these robots in the future for this story. And so now they're realizing that it seems they're trying to figure out what these kind of little egg things are. They find that there's a number of egg sacs that are kind of all around the ship, and they're trying to figure out what it is. We have Marine that goes, and she's to realize that like these eggs are starting to hatch, and they're starting to hatch these space spiders. Space spiders are to try and weld their way into this ship to go and try to attack these people. And Marine's like, hey, like, you guys got to get out of there, get whatever you guys could have came for, which is really much of nothing, because really all they got was Jeb is to tell this story that they have been searching for these people for X amount of time. They don't exactly say. And Wes is like, I'm a little confused. Why did they send another mission out for us? Because we've only really been gone for a day. This makes no sense. So we have this adventure, this journey. I'm filling it with words. So we have these guys continually going through this ship, and they go and find this kind of like forest or kind of gardening area that all of a sudden is to have this camouflage character that eventually they call Blarp. Kind of the Jar Jar Binks of this movie, but like, we always have to have this like cute, cuddly alien creature that is just to go on and be like, hey, this is this cool little thing that we might have tried to merchandise or whatever. But if they seriously did, I wouldn't be surprised. But this thing is just so goofy looking that I would like, why would they merchandise this? I would probably go on and be like, hey, like, merch the spiders because they need some kind of bad guy to fight. Because I think they did do like action figures for this movie. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But I remember them trying to do some merch for this movie, just because like they were really just trying to merch this movie out, if anything. So they find this alien that they don't really call it Blarp, and so Marine is telling everybody to get out of there. So they scramble out of there, and while they're doing it, all of a sudden all these spiders are coming in massive amounts. And so now Wes is ticked because he's like, all this $1 million equipment that I'm gonna have to all trade in from because we don't have a can of Raid, or because we like, I keep saying it like because of a can of a Raid. or Can of Raid or something. It goes in a goofy direction in my brain. So Wes goes on and starts rifling and starts killing all these aliens off. Some of them get pretty dang close, and one of them even is to scratch Dr. Wes or Dr. Smith. So hence why later on in the film he becomes Spider Smith. So they're blasting away. Everybody's to get out of there, and so everybody gets out to where they are seemingly the most safe. Will is taking the robot, and he is kind of controlling it via this kind of hologram, where he's actually this character and he can see things really well and control this a lot faster. So John is asking Will if the robot can be saved, and Will is like, no, like, you guys are going to have to leave because I'm kind of protecting you guys from getting these spiders on you. So they leave, and I'm like, shouldn't they have gone on and taken, like, all of the robots from that ship, just grab all of them, just like, heck yeah, like, this might come in handy, because it probably will. So they leave, and they try to get away from the ship, but all of a sudden all the spiders are trying to attack upon their ship now on Jupiter 2. And so they have to go and scan this spider leg that they found, and they find out that this thing is to, I guess, be attracted to light. And so all of a sudden we have remotely where Wes is to turn on this afterburner thing for Proteus, but he puts it up too hot to where all of a sudden the whole entire Proteus ship explodes. But here's the worse off thing. This explosion is way too big. Wes didn't realize how big that explosion was going to be, so all of a sudden they're now really gunning it out of here, and they accidentally forcibly crash land upon this planet, and now they're really effed. They're so effed right now. The worst thing that could possibly happen did. So everybody's like, yeah, it's the worst possible time for this people, because now they're really lost on a planet. They're not lost in space anymore. They're lost on a planet. So now we have to go on and we have to pull the nuclear vessels. If anybody remembers the one Star Trek movie where they had to go on and get the humpback whales, but they also needed like plutonium or whatever. They needed radiation to power up their cloaked ship. We kind of have to do that here, where we have to now find in this planet a source of power, because I guess like solar doesn't exactly work all that well. I don't know. It does. It is what it is with this film. So, because even Wes is mentioning like, hey, they have like 2 moons in this on this planet, and everything's all wonky and weird. So we have John and we have Wes that is deciding to go on into this mission while everyone else is just trying to figure out how to repair this ship. And so while John and Wes are going on, we have now Dr. Smith, who is doing like Morse code while Will is trying to reprogram this robot, saying that he's like, yeah, I think I can put parts together to make this thing work. And so in future time, we end up, of course, seeing what this robot becomes. And then they just kind of steal, I think they end up stealing like future robot. Yeah, I think that's what happens in this film. So, pushing on. So, we have Will and we have Dr. Smith. And now we have Dr. Smith trying to persuade Will, just like, well, hey, like, I think that we both need to go on and we need to find both John and both West because I'm very scared that they might die and there could be no one that could possibly save them. And like so I think we need to go out there and we need to make sure that they're going to come back. And Will is just like, well, technically you're a doctor, right? And Smith is like, yes, I'm a doctor. In only a very creepy way that he can be like, yes, I'm a doctor. I can help you. So, Will Smith, one actor is just going out there. No, Will and Dr. Smith go out to make things look good. And Men in Black reference. They go out to follow where, of course, John and both West are, and come to find out, West and Jonathan are in some future bubble in this planet. Because Dr. Smith bumps into these graves that have all the women graves, and Will is asking Dr. Smith, like, hey, what do you see over there? And Dr. Smith is like, hey, nothing for young prying eyes. So they go on, and so West and John are trying to get to this source, and what ends up happening is they end up bumping into future West or future Will. Future Will, let me get that right. And that forces them to go into what is left of Jupiter 2. And so they're starting to realize that they are, of course, in this future. And we also find out with those space spiders that the space spiders, I guess, are to eat their own wounded. And so we find out that older Will has come up with time travel. And older Will wants to go on and go back in time to the point before they even went on to do this Jupiter mission and stop everything from happening, because everyone was to die besides both older Will and Dr. Smith, who is now Spider Smith, because this guy has gone on and to completely change into what Spider Smith is to call himself a god. So technically we want Spider Smith to have himself go back in time to kind of correct things, or just kind of wipe everybody out with his ability to go on with his spiders and to wipe everybody out. And that's, I think, what he wants to do. So what happens is we also have both young Will and Dr. Smith who make it to, of course, where both Jonathan and both West are. And so we have Spider Smith who is attacking Dr. Smith, And we find out that Spider-Smith is to have, from all the time of them being alone on this planet together, Spider-Smith has gone on to hate his past self, and he goes on and pushes him around and smacks him around and hurts him. And so now, like, we have, like, the good guys that are, of course, being controlled by this robot who was at one point being controlled by Dr. Smith, but is now being controlled by Spider Smith because same voice, same person. So older Will is perfecting this time travel thing. We also had a moment where the way that older Smith was to tell his own father that he is his son was John was to give Will these dog tags that I guess his father gave to him. And so now John is giving this to Will as a thing to, like, hey, I'm going to go out there, but hey, I'll be back for these. So older Will is to showcase this necklace to John, of like, oh, so you are my son. This is just future you. So now what happens is they perfect the time travel thing, and so now it seems that Spider Smith is fighting over who is going on to what time. And so older Smith is realizing that Spider Smith is just using him. So what happens is that younger Will is to try to figure out how to manipulate this robot, because technically young Will was to program this thing and is trying to figure out how it can manipulate it to remember that these guys are all friends and that this robot should really just go on and help them out. So they go on and they do that. So now all of a sudden we have it where Will is leaving off to try to get to the ship. Wes is also trying to get to the ship because it seems like because of this time bubble, like, it's really destroying this planet, this whole time bubble thing, because of what John had done, is really wreaking havoc on this planet. So everybody's getting back to the ship. We also had the one moment that I kind of forgot about, between Wes and Judy, where Judy was mentioning about the whole, like she's just kind of so afraid right now because she has no clue where they are, and Wes just went on and started putting constellations into this window and kind of making, like, Porky Pig, and Judy started, like, going on and doing constellations also to make a Bugs Bunny, and then it seems like they were going to kiss or get on with the business, and Judy is just like, yeah, right here, right now, and Wes is like, yeah, like, how about right here, right now, and she pours water over his head, and so we see a scene later where Wes is, like, taking the water and pushing it away from Judy because he's like, I don't trust you with this water. I'm not going to get freaking my head poured over. Like, I'm not going to have that happen again. Because maybe that was like maybe a gag weirdly with this movie. Because we always want to look for, like, the weird goofy gags that happen somewhere where it's like, oh yeah, like, this took 20 takes and this and that. So anyways, pushing on. So Jupiter 2 is a takeoff. And come to find out, they take off without John, and Jupiter 2 does not make it. They end up crashing into this big, massive, uh, like comet or meteor that was from this big chunk of rock that was off this planet, and Jupiter 2, everyone dies. And so John is to go on and have to take down Spider Smith by just stabbing him with this award slash dagger. And so John is to remind Spider Smith that the thing about spiders is they always eat their wounded. And so the little small hole that John is to do all of a sudden has all of these spiders now coming up onto Spider Smith and killing him off by consuming him. So now older Will is to say like there's only one thing left for them to do, and that is to really just have John go back in time to tell the family what to do. Instead of having to go up, they need to go through the atmosphere, through the planet as it's breaking up. So Will chucks, of course, John through this thing and just tells him like, hey, like, don't forget me. And it's nice to see like his family again. So John, of course, is saying it's like, well, hey, just come with us. And Will's like, I'm sorry, like, there can only be one. And I'm like, really? It's just like, you can't have an older Will and a younger Will. Like, there's so many, like, what, like, this Will would not really exist because, like, that whole story just kind of just doesn't work now. So, like, a whole time thing would, like, drastically change who this Will really is. Considering like this guy never really stayed on this planet, even though it's an alternate version of him. It's still kind of like that one Far Escape episode where we have like a billion different John Crichtons. In one episode, we have like 5 of them, or like I think we have like 3, like 3 of them, and they're kind of contemplating which John to kill off. Because there's an uberly genius John, and there's like regular John, and then there's like caveman John, and they're thinking like, well, like obviously we should just kill off like caveman John and like just kind of keep the genius John, obviously. But then they decided it's like, well, actually, like all 3 of these characters need to be like connected together, like somehow, and so they have to kind of forcefully do that. But I also think Crichton was like cloned in one episode also. But anyways, pushing on. So doesn't matter. So we go on and we now have to go through the planet as and it's breaking up. And so they figure that out. We have this cool like imagery of them kind of making and going through this planet, which actually technically works. And so everything ends up working out, and so, but what they have to forcibly do yet again is they also are to figure out, while being on Proteus, where Alpha Prime is. They had been able to go on and like see that Proteus had a number of different solar systems that they have gone through, and there's a possibility that they can figure out where Alpha Prime is. And so like, hey, like maybe we can go on and do this hyperdrive again and be able to get to hopefully Alpha Prime this time around. So really, that's just how the movie just fizzles off and ends, with them just trying to hope that they can go on and hyperdrive to hopefully a apostle planet that they're very familiar with, and go on to their next adventure, which would probably not be a sequel because they only made one of these bad boys. But I guess really just the series can live on as it is what it is. So speaking with that, I think I'm going to get out of here so I can go on and do another review for today. Superman and Lois is probably going to be another episode of that coming out, hopefully sometime in the near hours, so I can go on and review that. So I can probably maybe do something else or wrap up my day. So anyways, goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.